Uncle Mark.
Yes.
Now, we three uncles were all raised in the Mormon tradition.
Mormon.
Where only one of us did the right thing, and at age 19, went and served a Mormon mission.
Went and threw a bunch of Book of Mormons away in Honduras.
Not that the pressure wasn't there for the other two of us to go and do it.
Don't
because
tell
there
them.
was rather extreme pressure to do it.
Yeah.
And you know, a lot of people look back with some degree of fondness on their missions. I know I would have died if I had gone on a Mormon mission.
I can't even. My brain won't even allow me to imagine how awful it would be.
2 years. I mean, Uncle Doug, you got sent to the worst place you could possibly have gotten sent. I probably would have. I would have been desperate to go to some foreign country where I would learn the language, and then they would have sent me to Alabama.
Yep.
And I want to be. I want to be. You know, if we have any listeners in Honduras, it's a gorgeous country.
It is a gorgeous country.
And this is nothing against Hondurans.
Wonderful people. It's just the country's got a lot of problems, and that's pretty undeniable.
And one of them is the United States of America.
Right. One of them was Uncle Doug, but it got better.
That's very fair.
They have 99 problems, but one of them isn't Uncle Doug anymore.
But here's the thing. Not every high-intensity religion / cult sends their young men off to be the marketing, to be door-to-door religion salespeople.
Nope.
Some have different
which is a pity.
It's a shame, really. We could use so many more of those in the world.
Is there some other thing that religions send people to do, though?
Well, let me speak to that, and it is, as Uncle Dan said, and we can get to this near the end. It is an effective retention tool, as is the Mormon mission, you know, paradoxically or counterintuitively. But, well, dear uncles, as we were just talking about before we were recording, the brutal winter frost is broken, the green shoots are sprouting, the trees are full of buds, the birds are singing, and spring is in the air. And, well, to us this means we can at least extend our quarantine to our yards or our patios, or at the very least just open the fucking windows to let the stink out. If you happen to be an Amish kid on the cusp of turning 16 in Pennsylvania, Ohio, Indiana, or Wisconsin, the coming spring means something very different. Although not connected by seasons, the warmth in the air has made me want to cast off my bonnet, leave my horse and buggy behind, and party like it's 1699. Today, let's talk about Rumspringa.
Rumspringa! Woohoo! Can I tell you, I am ready. Today is my last day of quarantine in Canada. I have not been able to leave my hotel room for 14 days. Wait until Uncle Mark's Rumspringa hits Toronto, baby.
Yeah, you're literally going to go for a walk. Don't play like you're hardcore.
This 53-year-old man is going to go for a walk around the Eaton Center and back. Yeah.
So most of us probably have some knowledge of the Amish practice of Rumspringa from the excellent 2002 documentary by Lucy Walker, The Devil's Playground. For those of you who have not seen the film or don't know about Rumspringa, the film is a dark, unflattering, depressing, and then surprisingly hopeful look at this bizarre Amish practice.
You should totally see this movie.
It's very worth watching.
Yeah,
I've never seen it. I'm excited to look it up.
There's and I'm not spoiling anything, but it's
crazy. You can't believe it's real.
It's crazy. But then there's a couple characters who you become very invested in, and they're, you know, one of them is struggling beyond belief with all kinds of things, and you end up really rooting for the kid.
Yeah,
Anywho.
You don't think he's going to make it, actually.
No, you don't. So if there's anyone out there listening that doesn't know, Rumspringa, or running around, is the Amish practice of relaxing the stifling rules and prohibitions of the Amish faith on kids once they turn 16, ostensibly to allow them to enter the wicked world outside and have a look at how we heathens, or as the Amish say, the English, live our wasted lives before returning to the fold and pledging themselves to the faith forever. Most of what is known of Rumspringa in the outside world is that for a time, Amish kids get their freak on and experiment with alcohol, sex, drugs, and modern conveniences before a shockingly high percentage of them return to the fold, eschew the worldly things, and live out lives of sacrifice and toil. So it's an interesting thing.
It's so and the kid, it literally, like, a Mormon Rumspringa would be like allowing your kid to watch a rated R movie.
Yeah.
Ooh. right? But this is like, whatever, go do you, right?
Yeah, and as we'll talk about, there's it has an intended purpose, which it seems to be succeeding at, but it's also massively irresponsible and damaging. So, so
it's perfect for religion.
Yeah,
there's
there's
a lot just fucked in every possible way.
Right.
Love it.
There's a lot more to it, and especially to the fact that so many return after being allowed to see how the rest of us live. So let's dive in.
Well, to be fair, it is Ohio.
Well, that's certainly part of it, and,
Right.
and we'll get to that. The practice of Rumspringa traces its roots to the founding of the Amish faith and the origins of the Anabaptist Christian movement. In the wake of the Lutheran Reformation, the Anabaptist movement began around the late 1500s and early 1600s. 15th and 16th centuries in Germany and Switzerland. One of their principal beliefs was that baptism, and therefore membership in the religion, could only be performed on adults who understood the obligation they were taking on. This belief seems downright enlightened compared to, say, the Catholic Church, which baptizes infants as soon as possible. Indeed, the Mormon Church practices baptism at the age of 8 under the obviously mistaken belief that 8-year-olds can give consent to such a ritual.
Yeah.
And are accountable after that.
At that point. All three of us were baptized at age 8, and to the best of my recollection, I did not consent to it. But that's a story for another day. The Amish take this practice even further, believing that consent can't be given until a person is at least 16. But as we'll discuss, it's not as enlightened as all that. The modern Amish faith was founded in the same region of Germany due to a schism in 1693. The new faith was founded by Jacob Ammon, hence the name Amish. The Amish faced some pretty significant religious persecution in the early 18th century because, of course they did, and many immigrated to America, the vast majority settling in Pennsylvania. Because at the time, the other white inhabitants were still subject to the English crown, the Amish still refer to outsiders as English.
Oh my God, that's funny.
Yeah. They retain many of the dress and practices from when they first immigrated, but not all. Their iconic dress and horse and buggy transportation are the most recognizable relics of their origins, as is the fact that they mostly speak, along with English, a dialect called Pennsylvania German or Pennsylvania Dutch. They eschew most modern...
That's always so funny. The whole, like, they mispronounce the Deutsch, and suddenly I always thought that they were actually Dutch, but...
Exactly. They're not.
No.
But, different time and place.
Yeah.
They eschew most modern conveniences such as electricity, automobiles, and, of course, zippers. But they are not bound by, say, like a rabbinical recitation of banned items. They have adopted many modern practices, especially in healthcare and agriculture. Their self-denial of the trappings of modern life are not so much a reenactment of their old ways, but an effort to prevent modern technology from getting in the way of their practices or endangering the family unit. So... for the Amish to adopt modern practices of, say, pasteurization of milk or inoculation of their children or their cattle is not, at least to them, hypocritical, because things like that, or, say, using manufactured material in home construction, don't impede their religious observance or hinder the family unit as, say, like a television might, right? So most Amish are still educated in one-room schoolhouses, which provide them with pretty obviously meager educations. And that education often stops at the 8th grade. Put a pin in that for a second.
Yeah, one quick thing about the conveniences, right, which I was kind of stunned to learn about when I was reading about them for some reason, is it is a little bit pick and choosy, isn't it?
Very much.
Like, you kind of can interpret it how you want, I think, as an individual head of family.
Yeah, and each community is slightly different. Like I didn't want to get into the difference between the Amish and the Mennonites in the context of this conversation, but the Mennonites, the biggest difference is they don't take it as seriously as the Amish as far as electricity and cars.
Yeah.
But yeah, families can kind of make decisions on their own. Communities can make decisions on their own. Some of them have no electricity whatsoever, but they go to the church on Sunday, and the preacher has a microphone with a speaker. So
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like it's not hard and fast.
Right.
So
sorry, you were talking about 8th grade education.
Yeah, 8th grade education. So basically, their education stops at the 8th grade. So like I said, put a pin in that. Because of their belief that if you want to be Amish, you must make the choice as an adult. Therefore, Amish children are not considered Amish. They are certainly raised as such, but the distinction is there. Then when they reach the age of 16, their Rumspringa begins.
No, Ezekiel, you're just because you've got a beard doesn't mean you're Amish yet.
Exactly. That's basically true. There are not exactly hard and fast rules to Rumspringa, and it can vary drastically depending on the specific community or indeed the family. But generally, when a child turns 16, most of the rules of the religion are suspended or loosened. These children are now free to indulge in modern technology like cars, video games, and the internet, and they are allowed to date, although there is at least the hope that they will remain celibate. Drugs and alcohol are not technically allowed, but a blind eye is certainly turned. This again varies greatly depending on the tolerance of the individual family or the specific sect or community you might be in, but that's generally true. The theory of Rumspringa is that every person who wishes to join the Amish faith have a full and complete understanding of what they are giving up, so that once they take their vows and receive baptism, they cannot be tempted by the outside world again, in which case they would be damned forever. The Rumspringa can last as short as 1 or 2 years, or well into a person's 20s.
Whoa.
It can go that long. It ends when basically you make the decision that you're either going to be baptized or you're going to leave the faith altogether. So only at the time of baptism can a person call themselves Amish.
Can you imagine how horrible Rumspringa was in 1693?
Oh my God.
When the world outside was the same as the world inside?
Yeah,
It's yay!
Funny you should say that, actually.
Wow, it's crazy out here, Dad. Everybody has the plague.
So like I said, the Rumspringa can last as many years as it needs to for the person to get to where they go. So as religious practices go, this one seems somewhat enlightened. One must make an informed choice to join the religion, and all are given ample opportunity to see what the rest of the world has to offer before they do. Hang on.
Yeah. On paper, it looks pretty liberated.
Right.
It's a trick.
It is.
Being tricked.
Yeah. So the deeper you dig into this practice, the less enlightened, the more manipulative, and even the more damaging it can be.
Right.
The Amish have never wished to live close to any major city for obvious reasons, so the vast majority of Amish communities are far off in the pastures and fields of Pennsylvania, Ohio, and Indiana. When an Amish kid turns 16, they're not off to the big city to go to museums and experience new cultures. The vast majority of Amish kids...
First of all, you just described what my Rumspringa would have been. I'd drive into Akron to go to the Modern Art Museum, right?
Well, it would have been something.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the vast majority of Amish kids spend their Rumspringa at home, or at best at a friend's house only a mile or two away. So in most cases, it's not like these kids are backpacking through Europe or doing a stint for the Peace Corps. And onto that, these kids in most cases have little to no money, so actual travel or even rent are well outside of their reach.
Right.
And except for their vocational training in agriculture or, say, woodworking, they are wholly unfit for a modern workforce, and their education, such as it was, ended at the 8th grade.
I can just see some Amish kid rolling up to a grocery store saying, "Okay, I'm here to churn.
Yeah, exactly.
Put me to work. I'll churn
I see on your resume that
you're...
I see that your only experience is barn raising.
Exactly.
I don't know how that applies to our computer company.
Oh, damn it. Well, we needed our barn taken down, I guess. No, I'm not qualified to do that.
Yeah, so, I mean, that's exactly right. So, going out and getting a job is outside of most of their grasp. Any kind of job that, in the modern world. For the vast majority of these kids, their Rumspringa plays out in their own community with the kids that they have been friends with all their lives, with their disapproving parents and younger siblings looking on. They are allowed to go to parties, which is what... I know, it's crazy. They can go to parties, which is what most of them spend their Rumspringa doing. But again, remember, these kids are 16, 17, 18, 19. Even if they could get to a big city, they could not even go to a bar where at least a bartender could monitor their activities.
Right.
And it's not like there's cool parents in the neighborhood that would let the kids use their basement to party. Everybody's Amish. So these kids are relegated to partying in fields and behind barns. For anyone who's been to a shitty music festival, passing out to carbon monoxide fumes in a manure-strewn field has an expiration date.
Yeah, for anybody who went to raves back in the 90s.
Right.
But in the movie, Doug, remember there was like a straight-up rave
Yeah.
going on in the barn, in old Jacob so-and-so's barn, right?
Right.
And with like colored lights and a sound system and beer and Dad was next door milking a cow.
Yep.
It blew my mind.
And we'll talk about that because there's a problem with that as well. These kids are pretty much, once you can go and do basically whatever you want. And there's a self-destructive streak in us all. So before we get to that, one interesting thing about the Amish culture is, surprise, it is toxically patriarchal. And
what?
Yeah, I know. Surprise, surprise.
The hell you say?
And so while on Rumspringa, the boys are allowed to wear modern clothes, which they call dressing English. The girls, although technically allowed to, mostly don't.
Yeah, it's weird. I remember that from the movie, that they're in their little milkmaid outfits at the rave.
Yeah, in their long dresses and bonnets while grinding to techno music and draining solo cups of jungle juice.
Okay.
It's
I gotta
weird
admit,
thing.
there's something hot about that.
I think.
Hey, everybody's got a kink.
Yeah, Dan just discovered something about himself.
So, like I said, alcohol use is not technically permitted, but is rampant. And of course,
sorry, Doug. Do the Amish drink at all?
No,
they don't.
Once you're Amish, you don't drink, drugs, smoking.
Okay.
They're very Mormon, but kind of more extreme,
right?
In that sense,
they're Mormon, but more so.
Yeah, more Mormon than Mormons.
They're a bit more committed to the pioneer shit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So obviously, along with alcohol consumption comes cigarettes, weed, and eventually coke, meth, and party drugs. So unsurprisingly, along with that come petty crime, sexual assault, and all the other teen maladies, right?
Yeah.
So imagine being a 16-year-old kid that has not so much as used a cell phone before. Suddenly you can go to a no-holds-barred party where you will, of course, drink like only a 16-year-old can, surrounded by horny boys and girls all the way up to 23. And then when in the wake of it you wake up in the back of a pickup truck, guilt-stricken by the bad decisions you have made, you have to go back to your Amish family home and nurse your first hangover without even the benefit of a hot shower.
Oh.
Yeah.
A journey of cultural diversity and self-discovery, this is not.
God, the sexual predators that must, like, hang out in this sphere, right? Like
in the periphery of the Amish communities, there is a bustling drug business, a bustling.
Yeah, I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's all of the things that come along with that are just kind of orbiting these Amish communities. Jesus. But in a way, they wall them in because very few kids penetrate that, what it's orbiting their own community.
Right.
So, like I said, it's not a journey of self-discovery, and not for nothing. How insanely irresponsible is this as parents? Most know exactly what is going on and the myriad inherent dangers involved, from drunk driving to sexual assault to teen pregnancy to STDs, but they let it go on. Unfortunately, there is, as we'll discuss, a very, at least to them, good reason for this. And not for nothing, but while 16 is certainly better than 8 or 0 for an age of consent to join a religion, it is still not an age of consent for nearly anything.
right.
And a sheltered 16-year-old is in no position to deal with the fire hose of confusing emotions around drink, drugs, and sex without some kind of parental support or guidance. This is such psychological trauma that they will take a lifetime to unpack.
Yeah, and especially if they're, that's why I'm suddenly freaked out about, sexual predators like non-Amish people, or even inside why couldn't they be Amish? But a barn full of fucked up 16-year-olds.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right, who have no idea. They don't know anything about sex. They don't know anything about anything.
Yeah.
And you show up with the Coke, you're suddenly the hero or whatever.
Their one saving grace is they're so insular that you would as an outsider, you wouldn't easily be able to penetrate into that world. But that's not to say that the sexual assault isn't taking place by the 22 and 3-year-olds.
That's what I mean. And I can go get a pair of buttonless breeches and a blue jacket and a hat and walk right into the barn.
So after all that, is it any wonder that after some years wandering this wasteland of guilt, hangovers, and confusion, all in your parents' backyard while they sleep, that upwards of 90% return to become full Amish members?
Crazy.
90%. The numbers vary a bit, but in some of the more rural Amish communities, the retention rate reaches up into the high 90s. These poor kids, hobbled educationally and intellectually, are blasted in the face with the worst and most destructive parts of being a teenager with no context, support, or guidance. And not for nothing, It's not like any of them have an out even if they want it. They have no network, no options,
no money,
no support, no money outside of their cloistered community. And if they opt to leave, they would be, and are, for those who have escaped, shunned by their community. So I can only imagine that it's a big jump for an 18-year-old with nearly no education, no relevant job skills, no knowledge of how a computer works, and no place to go, to walk away from all their family and friends and make their way into what seems like a preposterously hostile world. Yet some do, and I doff my cap to that level of bravery.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's truly amazing. So
that's hardcore to be to just because you're right. It's such a trap. It's this thing of like you get to do whatever you want. However, we're going to give you no training on how to deal with life. We're going to give you nothing that would be useful to you.
Yep.
And then of course you're going to come back and be like, yeah, that's no good.
Yeah.
I guess I do. I guess I do want to be Amish.
It is
the options are Amish or
a spiral.
That horrible life that you just put me through.
Yep.
I guess, that binary is stupid.
Yep. And it is the illusion of free will, right?
Yeah. Right.
And that's what makes the retention rate so high. We'll get there. So when you watch The Devil's Playground or any of the other documentaries about Rumspringa or the Amish, it does remind you how difficult that lifestyle is. If you want to see in the dark, you have to light a lamp or a candle. If you want hot water, you have to fetch it from the well and boil it. If you want to shoot down to the store, you have to hitch up a horse. It's a brutal, unforgiving lifestyle. And don't get me wrong, if you want to live that way as an informed, enlightened adult, more power to you. I'm sure there's a quiet satisfaction that comes from living that way, but that's not what's happening here. What's that?
There's even a smugness that you can have when you live that way.
Truly. In the wake of the documentary, The Devil's Playground, some Amish recognized the potential psychological damage that Rumspringa can cause and allowed drug and alcohol counselors to meet with kids that were about to start Rumspringa, which is a good thing, but it was very short-lived. Although not fully verboten by the religion, counseling is not exactly encouraged. So the damage continues, mostly undiagnosed. This goes for teen pregnancy and STD transmission as well. One last crazy thing about this story. You can go join the Amish if you so choose, but they are doing nothing to recruit you, and joining is a steep hill. Their growth is almost entirely, and almost is doing a lot of heavy lifting in this sentence, due to their birth rates, which average 7 children per household, which that's a crazy high average.
Yeah.
In 1992, the Amish U.S. population was roughly 130,000. Today, it's upwards of 340,000.
Whoa!
Wow.
Yes. So along with those bonkers birth rates and lower infant mortality rates than they've ever had in their history, Rumspringa is working, and working fabulously. At a time when many far more liberal religions are bleeding membership, especially youth members, and especially in the United States, perhaps the most conservative and difficult religion is growing at ridiculous rates.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is in large part because of Rumspringa. Given the quote unquote choice of any religion or lifestyle available, 90% of Amish children choose to live without electricity and ride in a horse and buggy.
It's familiar, right? It's a world that makes sense to them when they were not trained how to live in the other one. It's such a setup.
It's fine-tuned psychological manipulation. And it's one generation just inflicts it on the next. This is going on right now. And the Amish, as a culture and as a people, have no incentive to reform or reject this practice. It's working too well. Yeah. So, and like you said, Uncle Dan, one of the reasons the retention rate is so high is that the Amish believe they've made a choice, right? They've been given options. They've chosen this lifestyle. And as hard as it is, it's what I want. It's what I chose. And so they retain so many of their people. It's crazy how well it works. This
is a topic for another time, but there's a really fascinating 60 Minutes episode. You're talking about they don't proselytize. You can join, but there is no effort to find members from outside.
None.
Right.
And so they have a high incidence of some very boutique birth defects.
I was going to get to that, but I didn't. But yeah, some very strange.
Yep.
Very unfortunate.
So one of the leading experts that some Amish people have pooled money, built a little clinic, and they brought one of the leading geneticists from somewhere. to work with their community. And these kids have insane conditions. And then they talked to some Amish elders and said, now that you're aware of this situation, will you change? Will you try to develop a genealogy system like the Icelanders have, right? Where you can try to avoid close relationships. And they all just went, no. So
there you go. What a great group they are.
Yeah. So it all reminds me of
to see them in their buggies.
Yeah, totally. It all kind of reminds me of Christopher Hitchens' famous quote about free will. Yes, I have free will. I have no choice but to have it.
Right.
Yes. So yeah, it's an illusion and a manipulation, but it's effective.
All right. Well, I'm late for a barn dance, so I will see you guys later.
Bye.
Right. Bye.